The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the busy downtown streets as Rita smoothed her silk blouse and checked her lipstick in the rearview mirror. Her Mercedes S-Class purred quietly at the red light while she mentally rehearsed her pitch for the luxury penthouse showing. This deal could be her biggest commission of the year, and everything had to be perfect. The flash of blue and red lights in her mirror made her stomach drop. Rita glanced at her speedometer. She hadn't been speeding. She'd been extra careful today, knowing she couldn't afford any delays. With a deep breath, she guided her car to the curb, watching in her mirror as two police officers stepped out of their patrol car. Her fingers drummed nervously on the steering wheel as the first officer approached. He was young, probably in his late 20s, with a stern expression that made him look older than his years. His partner hung back, hand resting casually on his belt as he surveyed the growing crowd of onlookers. "License and registration, please," the young officer said, his tone clipped and professional. Rita reached for her designer handbag, grateful she'd organized all her documents just last week. The leather of her seat creaked as she leaned over. "Is there a problem, officer?" she asked, keeping her voice steady and polite as she handed over her documents. The care she'd taken with her appearance for the client meeting, the perfectly pressed pantsuit, the elegant pearl necklace, the subtle makeup, suddenly felt like it was working against her. She could read the doubt in the officer's eyes as he looked from her to the luxury car. The officer studied her license, then the car's registration, his frown deepening. "Ma'am, we have a report of a stolen vehicle matching this description. The registration shows this car belongs to Raj Kumar, but your license." Rita's heart skipped a beat. Of course, her new driver's license hadn't arrived yet, the one with her married name. Her current ID still showed her maiden name, Lee. She'd been meaning to carry her marriage certificate, but in the rush of newlywed life and a booming real estate market, it had slipped her mind. "There's been a misunderstanding," she began, trying to keep her voice level despite the panic rising in her chest. "Raj Kumar is my husband. We just got married 3 months ago. I can call him right now. He's a surgeon at Central Hospital." The second officer had moved closer now, speaking quietly into his radio. More patrol cars were pulling up, their lights creating a dizzying display that drew even more attention. Rita could see people slowing down to watch, some even taking out their phones. Her cheeks burned with embarrassment. Her phone buzzed. A text from her clients wondering where she was. They were probably already at the penthouse, waiting. She'd built her reputation on punctuality and professionalism, and now everything was falling apart because of a simple paperwork oversight. The young officer returned to his car with her documents, leaving Rita to watch helplessly as a tow truck rounded the corner. Tears pricked at her eyes, but she blinked them back. She had worked too hard, come too far, to let this break her. With trembling fingers, she pulled out her phone and called the one person who could fix this mess. "Raj," she whispered when he picked up, her voice cracking slightly. "I need your help. I'm downtown on 5th Street, and the police, they think I stole our car." Rita watched as the young officer walked back from his patrol car, her registration papers and license held firmly in his hand. The afternoon traffic crawled by, each passing car adding to her anxiety. She could see people in business suits slowing their pace, watching the scene unfold like it was a TV drama. Some had even stopped completely, whispering to each other and pointing discreetly. "Step out of the vehicle, please," the officer instructed, his hand resting casually on his belt. Rita's heart pounded against her ribs as she carefully opened the door, her designer heels clicking on the pavement. The second officer moved closer, maintaining what felt like an unnecessarily watchful eye. "Look," Rita said, trying to keep her voice steady, "I can explain everything. I got married 3 months ago. My new ID hasn't arrived yet. You know how slow the DMV can be." She attempted a small laugh, hoping to lighten the mood, but it fell flat against the officer's stern expressions. "Ma'am, we have protocols to follow," the first officer stated flatly. The system shows this vehicle registered to Raj Kumar, but you're showing ID with a different name. Without proper documentation, we have to treat this as a possible theft. A fresh wave of embarrassment washed over Rita as she noticed a group of young professionals filming with their phones. She recognized one of them from a recent open house she'd hosted. Her reputation in the real estate community, built carefully over years, was crumbling in minutes. Her phone buzzed again. Another message from her waiting clients. She glanced at the screen. "We've been waiting for 20 minutes. Is everything okay?" The luxury penthouse viewing she'd spent weeks arranging was slipping away. These clients were known for their impatience, and she knew they wouldn't wait much longer. The tow truck driver had already started setting up his equipment, the metallic clanking of chains adding to her distress. Rita opened her phone's gallery, hands shaking slightly. "Look, I have photos from our wedding," she said, swiping through pictures of her and Raj at their ceremony. "Here's us with the car. It was his wedding gift to me." The younger officer glanced at the photos but remained unmoved. "Anyone can have pictures, ma'am. We need official documentation." His partner was now talking into his radio again, probably calling for backup they didn't need. Rita's voice cracked as she tried one more time. "Please just let me call my husband. He can bring the paperwork. He's at Central Hospital. He's a surgeon there. You can even call the hospital to verify." She was fighting to maintain her composure, but the situation was becoming overwhelming. Another patrol car pulled up, its lights flashing unnecessarily in the bright afternoon sun. The growing police presence made the scene look far more serious than it was, drawing even more attention from passersby. Rita could already imagine the local community Facebook groups buzzing with posts about the incident. "Dr. Kumar is going to be in surgery for another hour." A nurse's voice echoed from Rita's phone speaker. Her heart sank. She'd finally gotten through to the hospital, only to hear the worst possible news. The tow truck's hydraulic lift whirred to life behind her, and Rita felt tears threatening to spill over. Just then, her phone lit up with a text from Raj. "Coming now. Hand it off to Dr. Patel." "Hold on, honey." Rita took a deep breath, clinging to this small ray of hope. She just had to keep it together a little longer, but every minute felt like an hour as her professional reputation and personal dignity hung in the balance. The downtown street had turned into an impromptu theater, with Rita unwillingly playing the lead role. A fourth police car pulled up, its lights flashing against the glass windows of nearby buildings. She couldn't help but wonder if the officers had nothing better to do than investigate a simple documentation issue. Her phone kept buzzing with messages from concerned colleagues. Word had spread through the real estate office grapevine, and now her coworkers were sending a mix of worried texts and offers to help. The loss of her important client meeting was now the least of her worries. Her whole professional image was at stake. "Ma'am, we're going to have to move forward with impounding the vehicle," the senior officer announced, having arrived just minutes ago. He was older than the others, with gray hair peeking out from under his cap, but his presence only added to the circus-like atmosphere instead of bringing any wisdom to the situation. Rita watched helplessly as the tow truck operator lowered the lift closer to her Mercedes. The car gleamed in the afternoon sun, the wedding gift from Raj that had made her cry with joy just 3 months ago. Now it was about to be taken away because of a simple paperwork delay. The crowd of onlookers had grown larger, with some people even ordering coffee from the nearby cafe to watch the drama unfold. Rita spotted Mrs. Chen, one of her regular clients, hurrying past with a shocked expression. There went another potential listing, she thought bitterly. News traveled fast in the real estate world, and this kind of publicity was exactly what she didn't need. "Please," Rita tried one more time, her voice steady despite her inner turmoil. "My husband will be here any minute with the documents. He's a surgeon at Central Hospital. You can call them to verify his employment. This is just a misunderstanding about my updated ID." The young officer who had first pulled her over at least had the decency to look uncomfortable now. Maybe he was realizing that this situation had spiraled out of control. But protocol was protocol, and no one seemed willing to wait just a few more minutes for Raj to arrive. A light breeze carried the scent of fresh coffee from the cafe, mixing with the exhaust fumes from the idling police cars. Rita's stomach growled, reminding her that she'd skipped lunch to prepare for the client meeting that was now definitely not happening. The irony of it all. Trying to be professional had somehow led to this most unprofessional scene. Her phone rang again. This time, it was her mother. Great, just what she needed. Somehow her mom had already heard about the situation. "No, Mom, I'm fine," she said, trying to keep her voice down. "Yes, they think I stole my own car." "No, please don't come down here. Raj is on his way." The last thing this situation needed was her overprotective mother showing up to give the police a piece of her mind. The tow truck operator was now walking around her car, preparing the chains. Each metallic clink felt like a personal insult. Rita noticed how her perfectly polished car was already collecting dust from the street, its pristine surface marred by fingerprints from the officer's inspection. A street vendor selling hot dogs pushed his cart past the scene, the smell of grilled onions wafting through the air. Some of the spectators had actually bought hot dogs, turning her humiliation into their lunch break entertainment. Rita closed her eyes for a moment, trying to center herself. When she opened them, she caught sight of something that made her heart leap. A familiar black Tesla turning onto the street, moving faster than the usual downtown traffic. Rita's phone chimed with another message from her clients. They were leaving the penthouse. 2 months of careful networking, countless phone calls, and meticulously planned presentations had evaporated in less than an hour. The message was polite, but final. "We'll be looking at properties with another agent. Punctuality is important to us." She leaned against a nearby lamppost, her legs shaky beneath her. The luxury penthouse listing had been her chance to break into the ultra-high-end market, a stepping stone to becoming the go-to agent for premium properties. Now that dream was slipping away while she stood helplessly on a crowded street. Her office manager called next. "Rita, honey, what's going on?" "Mrs. Wu just called the office. She says there's some kind of trouble with the police." The concern in her boss's voice made everything worse. Rita had worked so hard to build her reputation as the reliable one, the agent who made things happen smoothly. "It's a misunderstanding about my car registration," Rita explained, watching another police cruiser pull up. "My married name isn't on my license yet, and they think." Her voice caught as she saw 2 of her regular clients hurrying past, pretending not to notice her. These were people who had trusted her with their home sales just weeks ago. The tow truck operator was now attaching cables to her car, each metal clank feeling like a personal blow to her career. She had 3 other showings scheduled for tomorrow. High-value properties that required a certain image. How could she show luxury homes when she couldn't even prove she owned her own car? Her phone buzzed again. A message from the luxury buildings management. "Due to today's incident, we'll be reviewing our approved agent list." Rita's stomach clenched. Getting approved to show properties in that building had taken months of background checks and recommendations. One missed appointment, and they were already threatening to blacklist her. The growing crowd of onlookers had started sharing photos on social media. Rita could practically see her professional reputation dissolving with each uploaded image. In the real estate world, especially in the luxury market, image was everything. And right now, her image was that of a possible car thief being surrounded by police. Her assistant texted next. "Channel 5 news van just pulled into the street. Want me to try to stop them?" Rita's heart sank even further. Local news coverage would be the final nail in her career's coffin. All because she'd been too busy closing deals to visit the DMV. The senior officer approached her again, his notebook open. "Ma'am, we've contacted the dealership where the car was purchased. They're sending over their records, but it's going to take time. Meanwhile, we need to proceed with..." His voice was drowned out by the sound of the tow truck's hydraulics whirring to life. Rita's phone rang again. Her biggest client, a developer who had trusted her with selling his newest luxury condos. Her hand trembled as she declined the call. How could she explain this situation to him? That she couldn't even keep her own paperwork in order, yet expected him to trust her with million-dollar properties. Through the growing chaos, she spotted a familiar face. The real estate reporter from the local business journal, notepad in hand, making his way through the crowd. The same reporter who had just last week interviewed her about her rise in the luxury property market. The irony was almost too much to bear. A gust of wind swept down the street, carrying a stray newspaper that wrapped around her ankles. The headlines about the city's booming luxury real estate market seemed to mock her. Just this morning, she had been part of that success story. Now she was becoming a different kind of story entirely. The screech of tires against pavement cut through the afternoon chaos. Rita's heart leaped as a sleek black Tesla swerved through traffic, coming to a sharp stop just yards from the growing circus. The driver's door flew open, and out stepped Raj, still wearing his surgical scrubs, a thick folder clutched in his hand. The crowd parted like a wave as he strode forward, his hospital ID badge swinging from his neck. There was something commanding about his presence. Maybe it was the confident walk that came from years of rushing to emergency surgeries. Or maybe it was just the sight of someone who knew exactly how to take control of a situation. "That's my wife," he called out, his voice carrying across the street with the kind of authority that made heads turn. "And that's our car." The senior officer straightened up, his hand dropping from his radio as Raj approached. Even the tow truck operator paused, the chains hanging limp in his hands. Raj moved with purpose, but Rita could see the barely contained anger in his eyes. He'd left surgery for this, something he'd only done once before, when her father had his heart attack. "I have everything right here," he said, holding up the folder. "Marriage certificate, original car registration, insurance documents, everything." The young officer who'd started this whole situation looked increasingly uncomfortable as Raj spread the documents on the hood of the patrol car. "This is my wife, Rita Kumar, formerly Rita Lee. We were married 3 months ago." His finger tapped each document in turn. "Here's proof of purchase for the Mercedes. It was my wedding gift to her." The growing crowd of spectators had fallen silent, watching as Raj methodically dismantled the police's assumptions. The news van that had just arrived was capturing everything. But somehow that didn't seem as threatening anymore. This was a different kind of story now. "Dr. Kumar," the senior officer began, his tone notably more respectful than it had been minutes ago. "We apologize for the misunderstanding, but you understand we had to follow protocol." Raj nodded curtly, but Rita could see the muscle working in his jaw. He understood nothing of the sort. Rita watched as her husband continued presenting their documentation, his surgical precision now applied to bureaucratic warfare. The same hands that had probably saved a life earlier today were now saving her career, one paper at a time. She felt a mix of love, gratitude, and lingering embarrassment wash over her. The crowd began to thin as it became clear the drama was winding down. The tow truck operator was already packing up his chains, looking slightly disappointed. The younger officers had retreated to their patrol cars, suddenly very busy with paperwork. Only the senior officer remained, examining their documents with exaggerated thoroughness. A light breeze ruffled the papers, and Raj's hand shot out to catch them. The same quick reflexes that made him one of the hospital's top surgeons. Rita noticed his surgery cap was still half tucked into his pocket, a detail that made her heart clench. He must have run out mid-preparation when he got her call. The news van's camera was still rolling, but now it was capturing a different story. Not of a suspected car thief, but of a respected doctor rushing from surgery to help his wife. Rita could almost see the headline: "Local surgeon leaves operating room to rescue wife from police mishap." Maybe this wouldn't be the career-ending disaster she'd feared. Raj's phone buzzed, the hospital calling, no doubt wondering where their surgeon had disappeared to. He silenced it without even looking. Right now, his full attention was on protecting his wife, his wedding gift to her, and her professional reputation. In the fading afternoon light, Rita had never been more grateful for the man she'd married. The senior officer handed back their documents with an apologetic smile that seemed to physically pain him. "Everything appears to be in order," he said, carefully placing each paper back in the folder. "We appreciate your cooperation and understanding in this matter." The words sounded rehearsed, probably part of some protocol for situations where the police had clearly messed up. Rav's hand rested protectively on Rita's shoulder as the other officers began to disperse. The afternoon sun had shifted, casting long shadows across the street, marking how much time had been wasted on this ridiculous situation. The news van was packing up, having gotten enough footage for whatever story they planned to run. "I trust this won't happen again," Rav said, his voice calm, but carrying an edge that made the senior officer straighten his back. "My wife is a respected real estate agent in this community. This kind of incident could have seriously damaged her professional reputation." The officer nodded, probably thinking about the potential headlines, or worse, the potential lawsuit. Rita's phone buzzed again, her office manager calling for an update. This time, she felt confident enough to answer. "Everything's sorted out," she said, watching as the last police car pulled away. "Raj brought all our documentation. Though," she added with a slight laugh that surprised her, "I think we'll be heading to the DMV first thing tomorrow." The crowd had mostly dispersed, though a few lingering onlookers were still taking photos. But now they were capturing a different scene. A successful professional couple handling a difficult situation with grace. The narrative had shifted from suspected car theft to bureaucratic mishap, something anyone could relate to. The tow truck rumbled away, empty, hooked, and disappointed. Rita watched it go, feeling the tension finally start to leave her shoulders. Her beautiful Mercedes still sat where she'd parked it, untouched and unharmed, though now it needed a good wash to remove the dust and fingerprints from the police inspection. "I should get back to the hospital," Rav said softly, checking his phone. "Dr. Patel's covering my neck surgery, but I have rounds in an hour." He hesitated, looking at her with concern. "Will you be okay?" The question carried the weight of everything that had just happened. Not just the police incident, but the potential impact on her career. Rita squeezed his hand, feeling the strength that had just changed everything. "I'll be fine," she said, meaning it. "I'll call the clients who were waiting at the penthouse, explain what happened. Maybe they'll understand." She knew they probably wouldn't, but somehow that seemed less important now. A few passersby smiled at them sympathetically, the kind of smiles shared between people who've witnessed something unfair being made right. The local coffee shop owner, who had watched the whole scene unfold, came out with 2 paper cups. "On the house," she said, handing them each a coffee. "Looks like you both could use this." Raj's surgical cap was still hanging from his pocket, a reminder of what he'd left behind to come to her rescue. Rita carefully tucked it away, smoothing the wrinkles. "You really left in the middle of prep?" she asked, the reality of his quick arrival finally hitting her. He shrugged, sipping his coffee. "Family comes first. Always." The street was returning to its normal afternoon rhythm. Cars honked at each other, pedestrians rushed past with shopping bags, and the hot dog vendor had moved on to the next corner. But something had changed, a reminder that sometimes the most important moments in life aren't the big presentations or crucial meetings, but the times when someone shows up exactly when you need them. Back in their quiet kitchen that evening, Rita sat at the counter, staring at her phone. The screen showed dozens of missed calls, messages, and social media notifications. The incident had spread through the real estate community like wildfire, but surprisingly, not all the attention was negative. Her office manager had already sent out a company-wide email explaining the situation, positioning it as a cautionary tale about documentation in the modern world. Remember to update your IDs after major life changes, the email concluded. We don't want another one of our top agents missing important client meetings because of paperwork. The local news had run a surprisingly sympathetic story. Local doctor rushes from surgery to aid wife in police misunderstanding, read the headline. The comments section was filled with similar stories of DMV delays and paperwork mishaps. Somehow, their personal embarrassment had turned into a relatable human interest story. You should read some of these messages, Rita called out to Raj, who was making tea in their kitchen. He'd insisted on coming home early after his rounds, worried about how she was handling everything. Remember Mrs. Wu, the client who saw everything? She just texted to apologize for not stepping in. Says she's referring her sister to me. Apparently, she's selling her penthouse. Raj placed a steaming cup of chamomile tea in front of her, the familiar scent bringing a sense of calm. Sometimes, he said, loosening his tie, what looks like a disaster turns into an opportunity. He changed out of his scrubs, but still carried himself with that quiet confidence that had turned the whole situation around. Rita's phone buzzed again. This time, it was the luxury building's management. She hesitated before opening the message, remembering their earlier threat about the approved agent list. To her surprise, it was an apology. They'd seen the news coverage and understood the circumstances. Not only was she staying on the approved list, but they wanted to feature her in their next broker showcase. You know what's funny? Rita said, wrapping her hands around a warm cup. That client meeting I missed. They signed with another agent, but I just got a message from their daughter. Turns out she's looking for a condo, and she wants to work with, quote, the agent who handled that police situation with such grace. She shook her head, still amazed at how things were turning out. The kitchen window was open, letting in the evening breeze and the distant sounds of city traffic. Their Mercedes sat in the driveway, freshly washed. Raj had insisted on taking it to the car wash on their way home. Like washing away the whole incident, he'd said, making her laugh for the first time since everything happened. My assistant's already booked my appointment at the DMV for tomorrow morning, Rita said, scrolling through her calendar. First slot, 8 a.m. She says she'll meet me there with coffee and all the paperwork we need. The thought of tackling more bureaucracy made her sigh, but at least this time she'd be prepared. Raj pulled out his phone, showing her a message from Dr. Patel. Look at this, the patient from today's surgery. She saw the news and wants to send us a thank you card. Says it made her feel good, knowing her surgeon puts family first. He smiled, the corners of his eyes crinkling. Though I should probably avoid making a habit of running out of surgery prep. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow through their kitchen window. Rita reached across the counter and squeezed her husband's hand. I still can't believe you dropped everything and came, she said softly. There aren't many surgeons who would do that. Raj squeezed back, his wedding ring catching the light. There aren't many people worth doing it for. Outside, a car alarm went off briefly, making them both laugh. A nervous, relieved kind of laughter that acknowledged how differently their day could have ended. Rita picked up her tea, breathing in its calming aroma. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. The DMV, rescheduled meetings, curious colleagues. But somehow, none of it seemed as daunting anymore. Sometimes it took nearly losing everything to appreciate what you had. 2 weeks later, Rita stood in front of her office's monthly team meeting, holding her new driver's license. The conference room was packed, not just with her fellow agents, but also with staff from other branches. Word had gotten around that she'd be sharing her story, and nobody wanted to miss it. So there I was, she began, smiling at the memory that no longer stung, watching a tow truck getting ready to take away my wedding gift while half the city watched. A ripple of laughter went through the room. Everyone had either seen the news coverage or heard the story through the real estate grapevine. But here's what I learned, she continued, holding up her new ID with her married name clearly visible. Success in our business isn't just about closing deals and making sales. It's about being prepared for the unexpected. She pulled out the folder Raj had brought that day. Now she kept copies of every important document in her car, her office, and her home. The office manager stood up, adding her own perspective. Since Rita's incident, we've created a checklist for all our agents, she announced, passing out laminated cards. Everything from updated licenses to proof of insurance. We're calling it the Better Safe Than Sorry protocol. More laughter, but also nods of understanding. Nobody wanted to end up in a similar situation. Rita's phone buzzed. A message from the luxury buildings management. They just listed a new penthouse, and they wanted her to handle it exclusively. The same building that had threatened to remove her from their approved list was now offering her their prime listing. Life had a funny way of coming full circle. You know what surprised me most? Rita asked, looking around the room. How many people reached out after seeing the news story? Clients, colleagues, even strangers, all sharing their own stories of paperwork nightmares and bureaucratic mix-ups. She paused, letting that sink in. It made me realize we're all in this together, trying to navigate life's complicated systems. At the back of the room, she spotted a new agent taking careful notes. The young woman had just gotten married herself, and Rita made a mental note to share her DMV appointment strategy later. It felt good to turn her embarrassing experience into useful guidance for others. Her presentation wrapped up just as her phone buzzed again. Raj reminding her about dinner. They had reservations at the same cafe that had given them free coffee during the incident. The owner had become a client, impressed by how they'd handled the situation, and now they were helping her sell her second location. One last thing, Rita said, gathering her materials. Remember that client meeting I missed? The one I thought would ruin my career? She pulled up a photo on the presentation screen. A stunning penthouse view. Their daughter just closed on this property yesterday. With me. She smiled at the gasps and whistles. Sometimes what looks like your worst professional moment can turn into your best testimonial. As the room cleared out, several agents lingered to share their own documentation horror stories. One had shown up at a closing with an expired passport. Another had lost a sale because his real estate license renewal had been delayed in the mail. Each story reinforced what Rita had learned, that being professional meant being prepared for anything. Walking to her car, her beautifully maintained Mercedes that now had a fully documented paper trail, Rita thought about how differently everything could have turned out. The folder of documents sat securely in her glove compartment, a reminder that sometimes life's most memorable lessons come wrapped in moments of absolute chaos. The late afternoon sun glinted off nearby buildings as she drove to meet Raj for dinner. Her new ID was safely tucked in her wallet, her marriage certificate was filed in 3 different places, and her real estate license was newly renewed. But more importantly, she had a story to tell. One that reminded everyone that behind every professional success or failure, there's simply a human being trying their best to get things right.